Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Stephen Waggoner. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following school: Diamantina Cub Scout Group, Kayleen, ACT. From New South Wales, Holy Trinity School, Inverell, and Petersham Public School. From South Australia, Lucendale Area School. And from Western Australia, Comet Bay Primary School, Secret Harbour. Could I ask you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem? Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Richard Shields. Richard Thompson Shields was born on the 24th of July 1891 in the South Australian town of Moontar. He was the youngest son of William and Eliza Shields, and his father was one of the oldest residents of Moontar. He was a keen sport and highly popular in the town. He later spent time in Broken Hill working in the mines. In March 1914, Shields went to Port Pirie. He had some friends and a cousin in the town, and he picked up some work as a labourer. But he never completed the job, began drinking heavily, and a week later tried to kill himself by cutting his own throat. The police were called, and Shields was charged with attempting to take his own life. Shields responded by saying, "I only wish I had made a good job of it." In court, Shields pleaded guilty, saying, "It's no good this drinking when it brings a man to this, is it? There is no fear that I shall tackle it any more." 5 months later, when war broke out in Europe, and Shields enlisted in the AIF within days of the call-up, he was posted to the 10th Battalion and left Adelaide on the 20th of October 1914 on board the troop ship Canis. The 10th Battalion was part of the covering force to land on Gallipoli in the early hours of the 25th of April 1914. On board the troop, Shields, he proved an able soldier and was promoted to Lance Corporal in August. He was evacuated from the peninsula in October with gastritis and went on to spend the first half of 1916 either absent without leave or in hospital being treated for venereal disease. Instead of returning to the 10th Battalion after passing fit for active service, Shields transferred to the 1st Pioneer Battalion in June 1916. A few weeks later, the battalion was drawn into the fighting around Pozières. On the 18th of August 1916, on their second spell in the front line, the 1st Pioneer Battalion was under heavy shell fire. Lance Corporal Shields was returning to his dugout when he was caught in the blast from a high explosive shell. One of his friends later said, "My word, he was game. After he was hit, he called out, 'Leave me, get the others away.' He was evacuated from the front line with serious wounds in half a dozen places, but died shortly afterwards. He was 25 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Richard Thompson Shields, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. Before we leave this evening, I'd like to invite the Director of the Australian War Memorial, Dr. Brendan Nelson, to the lectern to say a few words.
Thank you, Richard. It is only a few words, but boys and girls, please feel free to sit down if you feel a bit faint. My name is Brendan Nelson. I'm the Director of the Australian War Memorial, and what you have just experienced, along with at least more than 4,000 people watching this on our live broadcast, is our last post ceremony. We've conducted it every night here since the 17th of April 2013, when we told the story of Robert Pote, one of our 41 Australians killed in Afghanistan. The service is the product of a lot of hard work by a lot of people here. None more so than a woman called Jodie Hammond. Unknown to almost all of you, her husband is a senior naval officer, and they are about to go and represent our interests in Washington, the United States. This is her last night, and I'd like to present her with something, if Jodie would mind coming up here. As Jodie comes up here, I'll tell you what I'm presenting her with. There's a lot of emotion in these ceremonies. Perhaps the most emotional that we've had here was almost 3 years ago on the 1st of November 2013. We told the story of a man called Robert Page. His name is on the Roll of Honour on my left, under Z Special. He was a medical student in 1940, left his medical studies to join the Australian Army, and he went into Z Special, like the original SAS. No one could be told what he was doing. He was one of 14 very brave men that went up to Singapore on a tiny little Japanese fishing boat, and then he was one of 6 that paddled 130 kilometres return under cover of darkness and put limpet mines on Japanese ships, and he returned to Australia. 10 days after he got back to Australia, on the 1st of November 1943, he married the love of his life, a woman called Roma Prowse. She had no idea what he was doing. He went on the second raid. It was a disaster. He was one of 10 beheaded by the Japanese. On their second wedding anniversary, 2 men from the army came and said he'd died as a prisoner of war. Years later, she found out the truth. On their 70th wedding anniversary, we did the last post ceremony here, and Roma brought the flowers from their wedding cake to put in the wreath. This is a photograph of Roma. She died only 2 months ago, and her beloved Bob Page, his photograph was next to the pool, as you see the shroud there today. And this was a particularly special service for all of us, but none more so than Jodie, who maintained her relationship and friendship with Roma, who was also featured in the Australian story. So on behalf of everybody that is here tonight, and tens of thousands of Australians that have benefited so much from Jodie's passion and commitment to this service, on behalf of all of you, we thank you. And we'll miss you.
Thanks, Brendan. I'll be quick because I know people have to catch buses. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work on a project like this. It was Brendan's vision. Thank you to the colleagues that I've worked with, those that have just operated in such a collegiate and kind and empathetic environment. We all do it for the same reason, that's for the families. And thank you to the Defence Force personnel, Ceremonial Officer Commander Paul Cottier, Warrant Officer Shane McPhee, Warrant Officer Paul Richardson, Warrant Officer Ken Lloyd, who've all worked on this project. We all love what we do here, but it's been a privilege to do so and to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you. And as we always finish the last post ceremony, we leave you with the words of the founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere and in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Good night. Thanks, mate.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that does conclude the last post ceremony this evening. We do thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you a very good evening. Thank you.